Hi everyone, and welcome to the Paddle Pod, your weekly podcast covering professional paddle, presented by Hugo and Gons. We're on to episode 89, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host Hugo here today. Hugo, it's great to have you on. How are you doing?
I'm all well, thanks, Gons. Yeah, another weekend of not playing paddle, which is, it's getting a bit strange, to be honest, but hopefully the next few weeks will be filled with playing paddle. But very fortunately, we did have paddle to watch at the very least. And I've got to be honest, I think this tournament was one of my favourite tournaments in a long time. Don't know whether you agree.
100%, but I don't know if that's due to the fact that we had been lacking a lot of paddle. So really anything that involved a kind of very decent pairs playing would have, given us that satisfaction. But yeah, I completely agree. I love the tournament.
Yeah, there's something special about Miami, right? It's just the fact that you've got Coello and Galán, who are now the kind of faces of reserve paddle, particularly Coello. And I really like the branding. I think the towels being bright pink and a lot of, at least Adidas having their players wearing pink, even some other brands, right? I think Bull Paddle had Chingotto in some sort of pink. I know it's not like bright pink, but a tone of pink. I just think it looked quite cool and quite different.
No, I loved actually Chingalan's kit, that kind of pinkish or I don't know, like salmon style color. I loved it. And as well, obviously, I think something that Miami brings, which is unique, it's kind of like all the stars around. And we saw throughout the tournament as well, key like faces of the public and sport figures like Alcaraz and Pogba as well. It's great to see, obviously, paddle getting this sort of attention and obviously in a place like Miami where, all the stars just go out and into these kind of events.
Agreed. Although, to be honest, I'm not sure Pogba is a great rep for the tournament anymore. I know he's back from his sanction from doping. But yeah, I don't think it's a great look for the sport, but I guess he still attracts so many eyeballs given what he's achieved in the football world. But yeah, I agree. I think it was special on all accounts, and even the training videos of players at reserve paddle, which I think is just like, it couldn't be more ideal in terms of the scenery. When you look at the players play, just like the green courts and the background, the palm trees. I know Chippy plays there a lot, Chippy Munoz, and posts a lot of pictures, obviously Coello as well. Just think it looks so cool. So everything about it made it very special.
No, and I loved as well the fact that it was indoor, because I was scared that it was going to be an outdoor tournament, given that obviously a lot of the Reserve Cup and events in Miami have been outdoor. And due to the whole paddle chaos that we're involved in and the fact that we haven't seen a lot of top paddle, I just love the fact that we got an indoor tournament to go along with obviously all the top ranked pairs playing. So that I think made it all the more special really to see like really high quality matches.
Agreed. And actually probably moving on to the actual play, and it very much links to what you were saying, an indoor tournament, but the courts were quite slow, I think, but kind of, in my eyes, the perfect speed of a court to watch the best points, because it's not really slow, meaning that players just can't smash the ball and it never pays off. And it's not really fast, making points really slow and breaks of serves very rare. It's just kind of that midpoint, which means that if your smash is on point, if you're playing the appropriate amount of topspin or the right amount of power, it pays off, and if not, you get found out. So I very much enjoyed it. There was quite a bit of a mixture of long rallies and only the top smashers in the game really being able to smash, I think. So I think in that aspect, it's probably, the perfect speed of courts. I don't know whether you agree, Gons.
No, yeah, I think it allows you, I think that speed kind of allows you to see everything that you want to see in paddle, right? You just don't want it to be very monotonous where every single point is played out really fast, and once a lob is being played, then the player's going to smash and the point's going to be over, right? So I think this style of court allows you to see those smashes as well, as you say, in certain moments or when the time is right. But it also allows you to see all the other facets of the game, which we know paddle has so much other than just smashing. The slow chiquita play, obviously constructing the point, moving the players either to the front to bring them closer, or also, playing a lot of to the back and keeping the players in a defensive position. We saw as well, I think, that Lebrón, for example, and I know that we'll get into it in a bit, but for me, the semi-final that he played was absolutely amazing, because you just saw the amount of things that he can do in a paddle court other than just smashing, which we know obviously is also like one of his key strengths. but just being able to play different tempos, like play it slow and play it fast, and deep volleys and short lob balls. I think that's just what makes the audience and really grab the spectator, I guess.
I totally agree. And then in the final, he showed us everything that can go wrong in a match, or at least at that level, because probably if I played the match that he played in the final, I'd be pretty happy. But
right.
Yeah, he probably went from the peak of his game to a below average match in the final. But yeah, maybe moving on to the actual games, I think it probably makes sense to talk in depth about 3 matches. I think the key matches were obviously the semifinals and the final, which the top 4 seeds made. So in that sense, no real surprises. But I do think the matches themselves were a bit of a surprise in many aspects. So maybe kicking off with Yanguas and Gogi playing Chingalan. That match ended with Chingalan winning in the tiebreaker of the third set. So, I mean, it could not have been more even. Also, in the tiebreak, they were 5-5. So, I mean, literally a 2-point difference made it. Well, Chingalan won the first set 6-2. Gogi and Yanguas won the second set 6-4. And then Chingalan, as I said, managed to win the third 7-6. I mean, I think Chingalan were overall more deserving of the win. I think they played better paddle. I'm not saying that Yanguas and Gogi didn't, but I do think that they were more dominant on serve. And actually, when you look at the amount of break points they generated throughout the match, they generated twice as many break points. It's just that their efficiency was, well, a bit better in terms of the amount of points that they won, the amount of breaks that they generated, but the percentage was much worse. So Chingalan won 5 out of 12 potential break points, whereas Cognito and Yanguas were very efficient. They only generated 6, but converted 4. So I do think, as I say, that Chingalan deserved to win overall, but I think Gogi and Yanguas showed what makes them, I think, quite a special pair, and something that they're particularly good at is just grinding out results. And I think they're good at suffering. I think they've both worked a lot on the mental side of their game. It's always been one of Gogi's strong points, I'd say, like long matches. And obviously he's probably one of the fittest players on tour. He can play bandejas for about 5 hours in a row and he won't get tired. And then Yanguas is obviously at the peak of his game right now. So it really showed. And that's why they managed to take a great version of Chingalan to the tiebreak of the third set. But yeah, I mean, those are probably my initial thoughts. What did you think, Gons?
No, I think to the point of the kind of the court conditions, I think these are the kind of court conditions that suits Yanguas and Gogi. I think in particular, Gogi is the one that kind of loves these conditions. And we saw, I think, very similar conditions in the Masters finals in Barcelona where John and Gogi won. So I just think it highlights that it just very suited to his game, that kind of slow court condition where you're able to play the points a lot more. You're able to construct. You're able to defend a little bit better. And I think that from a mental standpoint, as you said, they're both very solid players now. I think Yanguas is. I think he's developing a lot in that sense. That probably is the one area that he kind of still needs to work on a little bit to really kind of take it up a notch. But he's already a very solid player mentally. And, you know, they were able to grind out. I mean, they didn't win, obviously, but still taking Chingalan to a third set and kind of fighting throughout the whole match, I think kind of speaks for itself. Now, I don't know if this is going to be kind of if this is just like a result or a performance from Gogi and Yanguas that we can extrapolate going forward, just mainly thinking about those conditions that I think are very suitable to them. Last year, I think Barcelona was really the only tournament that had these conditions. Most of the other tournaments were quite fast. We know a lot of them were outdoors. And now, for example, thinking about Chile is an outdoor tournament. And I've already seen snippets of some of the players kind of smashing from their side, hitting the glass and the ball coming back all the way to the other glass. So we'll see how, you know, they adapt to other surfaces, but they're still a very solid pair. And when I think about all the other ones, to me, they are kind of sitting comfortably at fourth. I'm a bit surprised about Dineno and Garrido in a negative way. I thought that they would be a bit more competitive than what they have been so far, but we'll see how they develop. I think that Gogi and Yanguas actually complement each other quite well and better than I thought they would. I thought that they could potentially struggle early on. So fair play to them. And we'll see. I think from Chingalan's side as well, it was a solid match, but I do think that I still haven't seen that extra level from them yet. I still haven't seen them like out and out kind of blowing these pairs as they had done in the past. Now, I don't necessarily know if that's because they feel like they don't need to reach that level yet. But I mean, and we'll talk about the final as well. I still, even though they did win the tournament and, they got through both, obviously, the semifinal and final, I still think that there is an extra level that we had seen in the past, which we haven't seen yet. And I'm just not sure if they're going to reach that or not.
I very much agree. I mean, I think, as I said before, it was a good version of Chingolan in this semi-final, but they could have very easily lost. I mean, they were 2 points away from losing, and that would have been a massive, massive failure. And I agree. I think they've been good, but they've also, I think probably what's really the big difference between now and the peak of their game last season is probably their decision-making and a lot of key points where, as I said before, they generate a lot of break points. But when it really matters, they make, I'd say, a lot of unforced errors, probably uncharacteristic from them as a pair. So I think that's what's really hurting them. They've really got to work on those key moments during matches and pulling it through. I mean, I know they won the tiebreak, and obviously that's the most important moment in this match, but it was the fourth seeded pair. And I think Chingolan are a couple of levels above them. So they should have really beaten them more comfortably. One of the things that I did want to mention based on your comment about Dineno and Garrido, I agree. I think they haven't been as good as we'd expected them to be. And obviously, you and I spoke about this a lot offline, whether we thought they were a better pair than Young Waskoki. Young Waskoki so far have had a big advantage regarding being the fourth-seeded pair, not facing the top three, the big boys, until the semis, and they've done what they had to do. They've made the semifinals in both tournaments they've played so far. However, this week in Santiago, they're in the same bracket as Dineno and Garrido. You probably haven't seen that yet. So I think Dineno and Garrido's, they're big opportunity to put things right. I'm looking forward to that match. I do think we'll see it. So I just wanted to emphasize that. But Gons, do you want to maybe kick off with your analysis of the other semi-final, which obviously saw Coello and Tapia lose over 300 days later in a P1 tournament against none other than the bad boys, they're calling them. Bad boys in paddle, Stupa and Lebrón.
Why are they being called the bad boys in paddle? Yeah. That's actually such a fitting name to the partnership. I like it. But I mean, I guess going into the match itself, I mean, I think the most surprising kind of result of the weekend, even though obviously Lebrón and Stupa have the level to beat Coello and Tapia, I'm not sure if anyone kind of was banking or betting on it, but nonetheless, it did happen. And I must say, in this match, I was so surprised about, in a positive way, about Lebrón and Stupa's level. I mean, I thought both of them played spectacularly. I mean, Lebrón in particular was absolutely amazing. I think this is the best match he's played since kind of the whole injury thing back in the days when he was playing with Galán. I hadn't seen him be this impactful from the right-hand side up until, this match. And it was honestly amazing. I thought that he managed Coello so well. I thought his smashing was decent, but just from the way he was managing all the angles, the way he was setting up the points for Stupa, and how he was managing the tempo. So many times there were kind of balls where you could think, why don't you just go for it or play a really deep, fast volley, and instead he would just place it a kind of slow and to a corner or a side where it would do particularly damage. I thought it was just the control of the ball was absolutely amazing. And so many times as well, the way he was holding his racket and the intention, you would think he's going to do this shot, and then he would completely do a different shot. So I thought he was super unpredictable as well. And I mean, this version of Lebrón, like I said, for me is the best that I've seen since the injury, and for me, definitely the MVP of the match. I think something that I also felt quite encouraged about with Lebrón and Stupa is the fact that they went for the match. I think that is key when you talk about beating Coello and Tapia, because you're not going to beat them by playing safe. And they took so many risks. Like I said, I think Lebrón was in so many shots he would take kind of risks, but he was playing at such a high level, and you could see that he was so confident that he was able to pull it off. So fair play. I mean, they went for the match, and even in moments where you could think Coello and Tapia, they've broken back and they could you could just feel like, if Coello and Tapia get an inch, that they would then kind of resurge back and kind of pull away with the match. But in this instance, they didn't, and Lebrón and Stupa were able to hold off any sort of momentum or rally that Coello and Tapia could have. So fair play to them. I think on Coello and Tapia's side, I mean, the only really worrying thing was Tapia's performance. Like I said, on one side, I've said that this is the best performance of Lebrón, but that I've seen in like ages. I think opposite, this is the worst performance I've seen from Tapia in ages as well. I mean, just looking at the stats very quickly, I mean, he had a negative 7.5 contribution score. I don't think I've ever seen that. I'm not sure if he's ever had a negative contribution score, or if he has, I just don't remember when. I mean, 9 winners, 12 unforced errors, 6 out of 16 in smashing, so that's not great either. So Coello was pulling his weight, and I thought he had a decent match, all things considered, but Tapia just seemed to be off mentally, to be honest. Obviously, we have seen as well that he was wearing something in his hand, so maybe it was all like taped up. So maybe he's had some sort of injury that we're not aware of, and he's kind of struggling with it. But not only from a physical standpoint didn't he seem off, but I thought mentally as well, he just seemed like very drained. So we'll see what this means going forward. I mean, I don't think, that you need to have any alarm bells on or whatever, but it was just to note, I guess, that I haven't just seen Tapia play this bad in a while.
No, but I do think, and before I beef up Lebrón even more, who some of our most adept followers will know that I chose as this season's future MVP, most improved player. So I'm very happy to see that this tournament has been encouraging in a lot of ways for Lebrón. But no, I do want to note that our colleagues at 2010 did talk a lot about Tapia's injury, and apparently he had a knock whilst training. So that's why he had all that kind of bandage going on and the kinesio tape or whatever you call it all around his hand. So I do think he was not in a great position to play. Actually, in his quarterfinal match, he didn't even smash. So I think that's when his injury was even worse, that first day. So yeah, I do think that this win for Lebrón and Stupa has to be taken with a pinch of salt. I think it will give them massive confidence, and I do believe a lot in them as a pair. But I do think that Coello and Tapia struggled due to Tapia not being physically at his kind of full potential. And I do think that one of the mistakes they made, it's hard to call this not knowing how badly injured Tapia was, but I do think Coello tried to take too many balls from Tapia's side and go into the middle a bit too much and go behind Tapia's back and try to smash a bit too much, when actually it didn't seem like Tapia was in such a bad way. It seemed like he could carry his weight. So I think that was a bit of a mistake as well. I think because they had to change their game and Coello move a lot into Tapia's side and try to play more of the balls, I think that hurt them, even though Coello actually ended up playing just over 40% of the balls of the pair. So clearly Stupa and Lebrón tried to play more of the balls to Tapia. But yeah, that's just a quick opinion. But I agree. I mean, I think Lebrón was easily the MVP. I think he showed that he is almost like the textbook paddle player in the sense that he can play every single shot in the book, every single shot. Chiquita, he can play a cross-court forehand, cross-court backhand, down the middle, bajada, smash, volley. I mean, it's unbelievable. I was really, really impressed. And yeah, I mean, not much else to say after your words, obviously, but I do think that a lot has to be said about Stupa as well. I mean, when you look at those stats, even though we both said that Lebrón was significantly better or seemed like significantly better in that semi-final, the stats say that Lebrón just had one more winner than Stupa and the same amount of unforced errors. So I do think that Stupa is almost like that silent killer, a bit like Paquito Navarro, whose stats are always really, really good, but they don't seem as good when you watch them playing. So yeah, I think Stupa had a great match as well, and he played a key role as well in beating the number ones.
No, he's a great compliment to Lebrón. I mean, you can now see that their game styles match quite well, and they've adapted to each other a lot better. Like looking back at Lebrón and Paquito, for example, I mean, it's just night and day to what Stupa and Lebrón, what they're doing. And even Lebrón and Dineno, when Lebrón was on the backhand side, I mean, it just looks a lot better, I think, from Stupa and Lebrón. And I just think that their games kind of suit each other really, really well.
I agree. I think I understand why. I understand why it works much better with Stupa, because obviously Lebron's really quick to be aggressive and play risky shots to win the net, whether it's chiquitas a lot of the time, whether it's volleying and volleying in the middle of the court, which is obviously a risky shot, and then moving forward as quickly as possible. And obviously Stupa, being one of the quickest players in the game, if not the quickest player, is great at reaping those rewards and just going to kind of the net battle and winning those. In Spanish, it's, the choque de voleas, the volley encounters. So I think that's why it's working. I am still surprised at why it didn't work with Paquito, because I think that Lebrón should have just been a bit more patient. I think he can play that a bit more defensive paddle. I know it's not what he wants to do, but I think if he would have played it, they would have done much, much better.
No, I agree. It just seemed like they didn't want to adapt to each other's game style, basically, and kind of what they wanted to do. I mean, maybe moving on to the final itself. So very surprising, because we just talked about how great Lebrón was in the semifinal and how he had his best match in years. And literally a day after, it was maybe completely the opposite. Who knows? Maybe it could have been triggered. Maybe he was ready to play and he was, very excited. And then we did see a little bit of a clash in the warm-up with Galán, where Lebrón seemed to kind of tell Galán to kind of take down the intensity a bit of the warm-up. And I don't know if from that moment, maybe then he was just pissed off and mentally it kind of had an effect on him. And, I can imagine, right? Like if I put myself in his shoes or even myself thinking about, if I'm mentally thinking about a match, like let's say I'm playing a tournament and then I get triggered by an opponent in the warm-up, then all my focus and all my mental energy of, thinking about the match or what I'm going to do and how I feel confident about the performance, I just feel like that just takes a massive hit. So I wonder if it did have that. I mean, we don't really know. What we do know is that Lebrón had a terrible performance. I mean, some of his stats are really not very good. I mean, he had a negative contribution score, if I'm not mistaken.
He did.
Yeah. So the actual contribution score was negative 10.8. 17 winners, 18 unforced errors. So it's just crazy to think about the fact that just a day prior, he had such a good performance. And I'm sure that he was full of confidence after beating the number ones. And then the day after, he had a terrible performance. But it just seems like when he's playing Galán, and we've seen kind of this be a recurring theme, through kind of the matches that they've played, even though it's not many matches, that he just seems to take down, his level just seems to drop slightly. And we know that there's no love lost between them. I mean, even at the end, when the match ended, the handshake at the end was so cold. I mean, it was just a normal handshake, not even a semi-hug that normally players do or anything like that. So I just feel like there's a mental barrier going on at the moment when Lebrón plays Galán that he's just not able to get over, and that obviously is affecting his performance, which I think had a big impact into the match and how that played out. Because, like I mentioned previously, even though Galán did play well, and I don't want to kind of shade or kind of diminish what they've done, but it just still feels like they haven't reached that level that they had last year.
No, I mean, I couldn't agree more. When you actually look at the whole Lebrón-Galán issue in the warm-up, I've got to be honest, I've watched the clip over and over again, and I do kind of understand where Lebrón is coming from if the images are right. I mean, basically Lebrón said, or this is what I've been able to see, can you kind of take the intensity down a little bit, which I understand if you want the other guy to do that. I mean, maybe it's not something that many players ask for, but I guess you can ask for it and then see what the rival says. And it felt like Galán completely ignored it. So Lebrón walked up to the net and said, have I said something wrong? Have I said something bad to you? To which Galán basically didn't reply and just said, can you play me some lobs? So Lebrón was just a bit surprised and he stayed at the net. And then, I don't know whether you saw this, but Galán just literally grabbed the ball and lobbed it over Lebron's head at the back of the court. So just like completely ignoring him. To which Lebrón then answered and just took a ball and put it behind Galán. So, I mean, very childish from both of them, but I was a bit surprised, and I do think that Galán is at the very least equally at fault. I wonder whether this was a tactic from Galán, being totally honest, knowing that Lebrón is suffering from a mental standpoint and the fact that Galán clearly has the upper hand right now in their encounters. I almost wonder because obviously Galán then went on to be the MVP of the final. I mean, I've got to say, I thought Chingotto was sensational throughout a lot of moments, moments in the match. The stats probably don't say that, but at the net, he was literally unstoppable. I mean, Lebrón and Stupa sent all sorts of missiles into Chingotto, whether it was bajadas, whether it was víboras, volleys, and Chingotto just, honestly, I think he won 90% of those balls. So I do think that Chingotto very much led the pair, Chingalan, to the win. But when you look at the stats, I mean, Galán, 29 winners, 13 unforced errors. He just produces these stats and you're not even surprised anymore because he's done it for the past 2 years, probably more, but at least for the past 2 years, which is when we've been analysing them. So yeah, I think they just work very, very well in sync. And I mean, from Stupa and Lebron's side, no break points generated throughout the whole match. That's just obviously not good enough. They had a very bad first set, particularly from Lebron's side. I bet you at least 70% of his unforced errors were in the first set. I actually thought in the second set, they were a lot better. It's just that the tiebreak went Chingalan's way again. Now, one final point that I do totally agree with you on is that, again, when you look at the break points that Chingalan generated, 6, they converted 2. Yeah, just expect them to be converting more of them. I think they had enough of them to convert more of them in this final, and they just, made mistakes that are not what we're used to seeing from both Chingotto and Galán. So I think if they really want to compete for the number one spot, they've got to raise their level. I'm sure they will, but I just think that Coello and Tapia at their best will, even not at their best. Now we're going into Chile and it's going to be an outdoors tournament where we know that Coello and Tapia are specialists. I think Chingalan are really going to struggle to play against them if they do face them.
Yeah, it's interesting because I wonder if now we're getting into like a moment where the matchups are going to be quite close between these three, depending on who plays against who, if you see what I mean. I feel like now we're getting into a point where style-wise, it's going to be quite interesting. Now, of course, let's see how Coello and Tapia are because they're clearly the best pair and kind of a slight level above, I would say, Chingalan and Lebrón and Stupa. But let's see how this injury from Tapia develops and if they, if there's any kind of mental hangover from this or if they're tired and whatever and kind of just drop their levels slightly. But it feels like Lebrón and Galán are better suited at the moment to play against Coello and Tapia. I think particularly because Lebrón has improved his level a lot. And I think he's able to play Coello better on that cross-court battle. Then oppositely, I think that, for example, Chingalan, I think Chingotto and Coello, we've seen lately that Coello definitely has improved a lot more than what he did last year and is a level above Chingotto, and Chingotto is not able to handle Coello as well. But we do see that Chingalan against Lebrón in particular, be it because of this mental edge and Lebrón kind of still not, kind of losing to Galán in these kind of mind games and stuff, kind of they're a bit behind, I would say, Chingalan. So it's actually quite interesting because I wonder if we're getting to a point where, tournament by tournament, it will be kind of decided by the matchups that take place and, who has to face who in the semis and the draws and stuff. I mean, I do think that, of course, over the course of the season, I really think that Coello will come out on top. But I just think that it's an interesting point because now it seems like from a stylistic point of view, I could see Lebrón and Stupa giving Coello and Tapia a lot of problems. But then conversely, I can see Chingotto and Galán giving Lebrón and Stupa a lot of problems.
No, I totally agree. I think the matchups that you're talking about, which always involve Lebrón, to be honest.
It's basically the X factor.
Yeah, I think they're very right. So, yeah, I mean, I think the draws are going to be a big difference. Hey, credit to Lebrón and Stupa as well because they had a tough draw. They had to face Cardona and Augsburger in the last 16, who they beat in straight sets. Then they beat Momo and John, who are a very tough pair, particularly in these conditions, 3-set match. Then, obviously, they beat Coello and Tapia in straight sets. I wonder when last time... the last time they lost in straight sets. So... And obviously they lost to Chingalan, but yeah, they definitely had the toughest draw. Now, it seems like they have the toughest draw in Santiago as well because, well, Cardona and Augsburger are in Coello and Tapia's bracket. So that is going to be very interesting, given that it's an outdoors tournament. But once again, Lebrón and Stupa are on Coello and Tapia's side. So that's going to be tough for them. Chingalan clearly have an advantage. But hey, I mean, Koki and Yanguas took them to the third set, to the tiebreak in this tournament. Who knows? I mean, they could very much cause trouble, or could it be Dinero and Garrido, particularly with Garrido and his smash, which is obviously one of the best on tour. That can be a real weapon over in Chile. I mean, yeah, I think it's probably, I see it as a bit of a turning point in the kind of pairs and how we expect them to perform, in the sense that I do see Chingalan, Stupa and Lebrón, and Coello and Tapia very much being able to beat each other unless Coello and Tapia are at their 100%, which it doesn't seem like they are at the moment.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. And then as well, maybe on Chingalan, I think that this was an important win and it takes a lot of pressure off them, I think, right now. I think that Chingotto is probably really happy that they won, because it probably means that it will buy him a bit more time before Galán thinks about leaving him. So kudos to them. And yeah, I think that this win will take a bit of pressure off them.
Yeah, I totally agree. But now thinking about it, also due to the points situation, I'd just be massively surprised if Galán actually looks elsewhere, because based on his encounter with Lebrón, it looks like that return will not be happening anytime soon. And then when you look elsewhere, I mean, Yanguas has a lot fewer points than Chingotto. And then further down, you've got Dineno, who also has a lot fewer points. So I just don't think that the risk is worth it for Galán right now. So funnily enough, I mean, also, we're almost in April because of the whole issue with the P2s, etc. So I actually think they're going to have another full year together.
Yeah, well, it's a bold statement nowadays.
No, I know, but who knows? I mean, there can be issues with injuries, etc. But hey, Tapia's injury could be a big turning point, and that's obviously going to give other pairs a bigger chance of beating them.
No, I agree. And just to kind of finish it off, it feels as well like, for example, Yanguas, I think, would be one of the key targets. But now with how he's playing with Koki, and I think that they've quite established themselves as a fourth-seeded pair, for example, I don't see Yanguas necessarily moving unless he is, unless he's, either Stupa again or Galán or Tapia, which obviously Tapia wouldn't happen, is a bit unrealistic. But really, unless he's going to move up, I don't see him kind of going down and potentially teaming up with Garrido, because, they're quite comfortable, I think, as a fourth-seeded pair. And they are playing quite well.
No, I agree. I think, funnily enough, I'm not even sure whether he'd go back with Stupa, given that Stupa pretty much abandoned him after good results. I actually think that maybe he'd say, no, I want to stick with the Koki. I actually think that he'd be more inclined to look at Garrido based on how well they played together than Stupa. But hey,
that's fair.
Opinion.
Yeah, that is fair. I could see that. But yeah, I mean, I think that probably brings us to the end of the episode. And as always, Hugo, it's been a pleasure. And for all our fans out there, I hope you guys enjoyed the tournament as much as we did. It's great to have Padel back. And we have another tournament this week, of course, in Chile. So we'll be back in the next week commenting on it. Yeah, leave us your thoughts, what you thought about the semis, the final, and we'll catch you next time.
Cheers, guys. Have a great week. Catch you soon.